economic values, and another one is aggregating farm accounts. Aggregating farm accounts. So these two topics will be dealt today: aggregating project accounts, and the first one is determination of economic values. There are definitely certain issues while doing project analysis. We have to consider many aspects that affect our choice on project alternative projects available. So in project analysis, to carry out social cost benefit analysis of the projects, we need economic valuation of the alternative projects available, that enables us to know whether a project is likely to contribute significantly to the development of the economy, or the contribution is large enough to justify the use of scarce resources. Because resources at the disposal of the economy are limited. All feasible projects cannot be taken up simultaneously. Therefore, we have to consider more than twice which project we should go for. So it is important to know the economic value, how much a project is going to contribute to the national exchequer or the different sections of the society. Economic valuation also helps to make a choice of project consistent with the objectives of national planning. For example, employment, output, consumption, foreign exchange earning, income distribution, etc., etc. Because there are different problems of the economy at different times. Sometimes it is more important to employ the idle resources of the economy, including labor. Sometimes it is important to increase consumption. On the other time, it is important to earn foreign exchange to finance our imports. Sometimes we need to bring about equality in income distribution. There may be problems related to these objectives. So, economic analysis helps us to pick the project which helps solve our most important problem first. It basically allows for remuneration of labor and other factors of production at market prices or shadow prices, whichever approximates the true opportunity cost of the factor or the service. Economic values are based on economic prices, which are associated with opportunity cost. Opportunity cost means the value of the option foregone. That is, opportunity that was in hand, that might be at hand, but foregone because of this present option has been chosen. So this opportunity cost actually is the real value, the real economic price actually for that resource or factor. So it is required for allocation of resources to maximize their productivity. There are no doubt certain concepts based on this economic values are considered. Economic prices are important for evaluating the contribution made by the goods and services created through projects. So concept of economic values we must know. The theory of valuation is a major branch of economic theory, and it makes a distinction between value and price. Value of a commodity is based on the theory of utility actually, and its demand is based on its utility value. Utility may be knowing, it's a power of it's a capacity to satisfy one's need or want. Power of satisfaction actually is termed as utility. Based on this utility, goods are demanded actually. Price on the other hand, for a commodity emerges from interaction of demand for and supply of factor services. And the interaction of demand for and supply of can happen only in the marketplace and only in the market if market exists for this factor services or goods. It reflects it reflects a balance between what a consumer is willing to pay and what a producer is willing to accept. In market at marketplace, actually two opposing forces interact with one another with their respective objectives of maximizing their objectives. Being a seller, a factor supplier always tend to sell his factor services at highest possible price, while on the other hand, a buyer as a consumer, in order to maximize his satisfaction, tend to buy a good at least possible price. So this conflicting objectives of producers and sellers will interact and make a balance between these two conflicting objectives. So this marketplace reconciles two things: willingness to pay and willingness to accept. And they come at a compromising point depending upon their relative strengths, and they agree to exchange the good or service at this price. However, such an equilibrium may not exist also, because there are very valid reasons. Equilibrium between willingness to pay and willingness to accept, that is demand and supply, may not exist. First, on account of non-existence of market, there are certain goods which are consumed, supplied, and demanded, but for them there is no organized market, like water in rural setting. People know the value of water, how important the water is, but not its price. They do not know the price, what price they are ready to pay, at what price it is available. In rural settings, it is not known. So price may not exist for such a important good without which survival is not possible. But uh, definitely it has value. Secondly, even if a market exists, the community may have been under administered price system. Certain interventions, certain interferences are done by local authorities or central authorities by manipulating demand and or supply, or sometimes the price only. So then its price may not reflect the true value actually. Price may not reflect the true value. Thirdly, under imperfect market conditions, consumers' willingness to pay and the price determined by the market conditions may differ. Imperfections ranging from monopoly to monopolistic competition. There are range of market versions. In monopoly market, the seller exercises its monopoly power and charges a price higher than it deserves. Or in monopoly market where only one buyer of the commodity presents, then in that case, the seller, the supplier is bound to accept the lower price than the good or service deserves. So market price may not reflect the true value of the commodity, good or service. There are these reasons, but we have discussed. Firstly, non-existence of a market, and secondly, the administrative interference in the market mechanism, and thirdly, imperfections in the market. So we can therefore see that in practice, value and price of a commodity may or may not be same. Am I audible to all? Hello? Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
Okay. Should I continue?
You can continue, yes.
Theoretical considerations are there. The economic theory says that every economic good will be priced at its marginal value product in perfect market. Once which is one which is highly competitive and have many buyers and sellers. Actually, in perfectly competitive markets, individual buyer or seller is negotiable in relation to the entire buyers and sellers. So, economic theory says that economic every economic good will be priced at its marginal value product in a perfect market. That is, the price of every good and service will just exactly reflect the value the last unit utilized of it contributes to the production. Whenever a unit of good can produce more in some other activity, its price will rise and it will be attracted there. When the economy is in equilibrium, the opportunity cost and the price will be equal. This is the only condition under which price and the value of a good are equal. When economy is in equilibrium, do you understand what is meaning of equilibrium? Equilibrium is a state is a situation in which economic agent or aggregate of economic agents have no incentive to change its economic behavior. So when this situation is achieved, when no economic agent, I'm sorry, there is a mic open of someone that is echoing me and disturbing me. Please make it turn off. Are you getting this thing? My voice is echoing back to me. So please turn off your mic. Whosoever is there whose mic is open. Please help me. Okay, it's okay now. When economy is in equilibrium, the opportunity cost and the price will all be equal. It is only situation in which price may reflect the value of a good. Otherwise, there is no condition. And the conditions, what I have narrated earlier also, these are the situations in which a price may not reflect the value of good. Resources will then have been allocated through price mechanism. It is the price which guide the allocation of resources from one industry to another industry, from one sector to another sector. So when economy is not in equilibrium actually, when such type of movements are possible, when economy once reached in a situation where no economic agent or aggregate of economic agents have tendency to move, incentive to change its economic behavior, then this reallocation of resources is not possible. So prices help guide the resources to be engaged for economic activities actually. Resources will then have been allocated through price mechanism to use where the last unit utilized of every good in the economy is at its most productive use. No transfer of resources could result in a greater output. Reallocation of resources is done only to achieve greater production out of the same amount of resources. When it is not possible, then resources cannot be reallocated. However, such ideal conditions do not exist and market prices do not always reflect values, as market prices necessarily do not reflect the economic or social values of goods and services. Market prices Market prices reflect only the value when the economy is in equilibrium. In this case, it is not possible when market is imperfect. It is not possible the price may reflect the true value of the good or service. There are certain valid reasons actually. First, how much money a consumer is ready to offer depends on his income level. For example, a rich person may offer more money for a minute thing, while a very poor person may find it difficult to spend even very small amount of money on essentials. Maybe knowing those people who are having more money are ready to offer any amount for a small as good, but a poor person who barely meets his need is find it difficult to spend this money, even the good is more essential, much essential for him or her. The willingness to pay in the market is thus not a good guide to social welfare. Willingness to pay in the market is not a good indicator to measure the social welfare, since it includes the influence of income distribution on the prices offered. We have therefore quite a genuine reason to consider distributional questions in economic valuation. And second reason, there are influences that work outside the market rather than through it. These are called externalities. Externalities are relevant for economic valuation exercises. These are very much important for valuation of economic valuation of projects. Externalities are often quite pervasive and are arise in the process of production, in the process of consumption, and in the process of sales and distribution as well. You may see in these externalities may arise in the process of production as a production process undertaken by the project may result in air and water pollution or noise pollution or any other sort of pollution. Similarly, in the process of consumption, externalities may result in additional private vehicles crowding the road constructed for this project purpose. Or in distribution, bright shops display affecting the harmony of the community. Harmony of the community may attract the consumers to buy the goods. So these externalities arise outside the market actually, and because of these externalities, market price may not reflect a true value. Third one, even in the absence of externalities and consideration of income distribution, market price may still be misleading. Even there are no externalities arising and no income distribution, market price still may be misleading. If we look at market value of a good, we get a measure of a floor to expected satisfaction. But in fact, consumers may expect more and get more. We'll have to examine the excess of what consumers are willing to pay for a particular good and what they actually pay. The difference in willingness to pay and what actually they pay is called consumer surplus, sometimes called consumer surplus. In alongside figure, you can see the line AB represents the maximum amount a consumer is ready to pay for each unit of a good if market price is BC. He'll buy only a OC unit of that particular good. So actually, how much amount one is willing to pay and how much amount he will buy if a particular price prevails. The total expenditure he makes on the purchase of this goodwill will be equal to OB, ODBC, which will represent the earning of the producer from this purchase. But the value of the satisfaction that he anticipates is more than the amount which he pays, namely OABC. Is it agreeable to you? Is it agreeable to you? Whether this pointer of my mouse is visible to you on your screen? Hello?
Yeah,
Is it visible to you?
it is visible.
Okay. Please turn off your mic. Okay. So see, this much is the amount which he is ready to pay. This is a ODBC, but the satisfaction which he derives is below this curve actually. So this is OCAB. So this area is larger than the area which is covered by price. So this there is presence of consumer surplus actually. So the the area under ADB represents the surplus that he enjoys. It is clearly a relevant consideration for economic valuation in project analysis. Consideration of income distribution, consideration of externality, and consumer surplus are among the factors that distort market prices. That is how market prices do not reflect economic value of the good. So, as the economic value for any good reflects its opportunity cost. Opportunity cost we use shadow price for estimation in comparison to market prices, which can which are used in financial analysis. Actually, for economic analysis, we need the exact valuation, economic valuation of the resources, while for financial analysis, we need the market prices. So, market prices are used for financial analysis and this economic prices, economic value, shadow prices or the opportunity cost are used for social benefit cost analysis or economic valuation. Shadow price. What is concept of shadow price? Shadow price. Shadow prices can be defined as those prices which will prevail in the economy if it were in perfect equilibrium under conditions of perfect competition. When markets dealing with these goods and services which we are talking of in the project, if are valued in a market in a market which is in equilibrium and this market is perfectly competitive. So if this is the case, then uh, price so determined will reflect the true value of the factors or goods or services. Conceptually, the shadow price are based on the benefits, based on the benefits and alternate opportunities, on the benefits of alternate opportunities which are sacrificed for the selected course of action to achieve the given objective. The appropriate concept of opportunity cost or shadow price is that of a maximum alternative benefit foregone. Every because of very nature and nature of the goods and services, they are versatile in nature. They can be put to many uses, alternative uses. So, for being in one position or one use, other uses are being sacrificed. And being a rational decision maker, every project planner will opt the use of that good, which is most productive one. For example, if we require 10,000 tons of steel for an irrigation project, now this steel will have number of alternative uses in the economy. For example, export, manufacture of consumer goods and producer goods, etc. We have to identify the relevant cost as the maximum benefit that are lost by using up this amount of steel in the irrigation project. The country will not be able to export it. The country will not be able to put it in manufacturing of consumer goods or producer goods since it is being used in the irrigation project. So other opportunities are being sacrificed, and opportunity cost will be the value of the option which is next to this present use, next best alternative being sacrificed. So in the identification of costs as maximum benefit sacrificed, the alternative opportunity cost must be defined carefully and realistically. We should keep in mind the real feasibility and not merely technical possibilities. While finding out opportunity cost of any resource or any good or service, we must keep in mind the real feasibilities rather than technical feasibilities, technical possibilities. The maximum benefit that has to be identified with cost will form the list of real feasible alternatives. The technical opportunities that cannot be made use of given social and political constraints are not real opportunities actually. So we must keep in mind while valuing the person, valuing a factor or service, it must be realistically and realistically valued, carefully and realistically valued. And for doing so, we must consider this feasibilities and possibilities. To identify feasible opportunities requires a considerable depth of understanding of political and social structure, which is beyond pure economics. These political and social constraints cannot be uh, explained with the economic theories actually. So these are outside the purview of the economic considerations. But these must be kept in mind while planning a project actually. Identify physical opportunities. To identify feasible opportunities requires a considerable depth of understanding. Without having understanding of social, cultural values and political setup of the country, one cannot propose a plan to undertake this or that activity and use of this or that factor service. So as opposed to technical feasibility, just find these feasibilities which are important. In particular, the shadow prices depend on the extent to which the government exercises its policy instruments. Policy instruments in the form of taxes, tariffs, public investment, regulatory mechanism, etc. Actually, government intervenes in the market in a number of ways. Sometimes it imposes tax on the producer goods, other time it imposes tax on the consumer goods. Sometimes it gives a subsidy to the producers. Sometimes it gives subsidies to the consumers. Sometimes it undertakes investment, huge investment for the creation of common goods for to be used by the people of the country. So that is how Administration of prices is done. Prices are regulated. Many regulatory mechanisms are exercised by government. So shadow prices depend upon this intervention as well. But the extent to which these instruments are and can be controlled is constrained by a variety of social and political considerations. Therefore, considerable judgment is required to estimate the economic values. This judgment depends on a clear identification of political and social constraints that limit economic opportunities. Now, estimating economic values, how factors or goods or services can be valued economically. So, estimation of economic values of goods and services is done. We have certain steps to be followed, and we'll discuss all these in following slides. We know the price reflect value or can be adjusted to do so. Price reflect values or can be used adjusted to do so. Although the markets are imperfect, but first approximation of a true value of a good is its a market price. Market price is the first approximation of any value of any good or service. Though it may vary from true economic value, but it is still an approximation of the value of the good. We can put, in other words, if we can find a market price for a good, that is normally the best price to use in economic valuation. The criterion used is to determine the consumer's willingness to pay. Consumer's willingness to pay. The first measure suggested for willingness to pay is market price itself. For when a consumer pays a given price for a good, the satisfaction he derives from that good must be at least as high as the sacrifice he makes in cash. For purchasing a good, any valuable consideration is offered by valuable consideration including cash is made by a purchaser. So he undertakes certain sacrifices. So one must compare this sacrifice, and this price depends on this. How much satisfaction one is deriving and how much sacrifice one is making. If a satisfaction derived is not more than the sacrifice one is doing, one cannot ready to buy. So it is important consideration actually. First measure suggests for willingness to pay is market price itself. When a consumer pays a given price for a good, means buys a good at a particular price, the satisfaction he derives from this particular good must be at least as high as sacrifice he makes in cash. If this satisfaction is not equal to this or satisfaction derived is less than that, he will not buy it. Or if satisfaction derived from this good is more than that, he will tend to buy more. Because he will be in benefit. There will be some consumer surplus. This is the situation where consumer satisfaction and consumer sacrifice are equal. It's the case of indifference actually, where consumer neither is enjoying any surplus nor incurring any loss. In other words, his willingness to pay must be at least as high as market price of a good, or else he would not engage in the transaction. The conditions which guarantee that consumer willingness to pay is not greater than the market price he will be offering. We'll discuss it. What is the conditions which guarantee that consumer willingness to pay is not greater than the market price? First, we do adjusting financial prices to economic values. As we have discussed that this market prices do not reflect economic values. For valuing them economically means valuing up to their opportunity cost or at shadow prices, they need to be adjusted. There are numerous prices actually. The prices of whom are determined in different markets. Therefore, they have to be adjusted for their opportunity cost or for the shadow prices. The conditions which guarantee that consumers' willingness to pay for a good and service does not exceed the market prices threefold. One, the goods and services are freely available to any potential consumer willing to pay the market price. That is, the absence of rationing and other restrictions. Consumer is not restricted, not restrained from consuming that good. This good is freely available to the extent possible or to the resources. Then price may not exceed, market price may not exceed the willingness to pay. Second one, no consumer is big enough to exercise monopoly power. Monopoly power, a monopoly in buying, a monopoly in selling. Monopoly buying, power to influence through his own purchase the market price level. And thirdly, the addition to the supply of goods and services brought about by the project is not large enough to change the market price. As I have discussed earlier, any individual buyer or seller itself in a perfectly competitive market is negligible. And no project is large enough to produce the goods which can influence the price. And or the no buyer or no consumer of the project goods is large enough to exercise monopoly power, influence prices, control prices through his own purchase or through his or own purchases in the market price level. Conditions first and second are the conditions of competitive buying actually. Wherever buying is competitive, we should expect that the price paid by each consumer for his last unit of good reflects precisely his expectations of satisfaction from that unit, and therefore also his willingness to pay for it. For if his willingness to pay exceeded the market price, he would buy more goods at that price. That he is free to do so. That is, he is free to buy to the extent possible of its resources, and that is own purchases would not push price to any level up. This argument holds good irrespective of whether the seller are in the position to influence the market price through their own action, thereby exercising monopoly power. All that is required is that the conditions of purchase be competitive. Conditions of a purchase be competitive. Condition 3 is also required to ensure that the anticipated market price of the goods manufactured by project reflects the willingness to pay for all additional units of goods supplied by the project. If the willingness to pay for an extra unit is same both before and after the project takes effect, we can be sure that no consumer of additional output was willing to pay any more than the market price for it. No one will be ready. If one of the three conditions is not satisfied, we can no longer say that consumer willingness to pay is limited to market price. If any of the conditions stated above is violated, then we can no longer say that consumer willingness to pay is limited to market price. If the output of the project is not freely available to consumer at a given market price, or if it is large enough to result in a change in the corresponding price of the commodity, the measurement of a consumer's willingness to pay has to deviate from the value of the consumer's actual payment, which it will exceed. So an estimation of willingness to pay will then require investigation into shape of demand curve for the product. Willingness to pay will depend. There's a demand curve. The shape of the demand curve will reflect the willingness to pay for any good. The estimation of this willingness to pay for any good will then require this investigation into the shape of the demand curve for the product concerned. There are fairly well-developed techniques for this purpose. We do this frequently by locating the shape of the demand curve, whether it is linear or curvilinear or so. But it depends actually on the nature of the commodity that is being produced by the project. So we can apply those principles for adjusting the financial prices to economic values in case of consumer goods, producer goods, and that are freely traded in the market that have a market price. However, in some cases, the output of the project is not purchased at all in the market, so that there is not even a first approximation for in the form of market price. Those goods which are not entering the market for those goods do not exist. For example, the goods and services like educational or medical facility or welfare programs, which often do not have any meaningful market price in the absence of a market for these services or these commodities. So, no doubt there is a problem in valuing the goods or services being created by the project. Since we do not have even first approximation But we need to consider the value of these for economic valuation purpose. For economic valuation purpose, every outcome of the project need to be taken into account. Then only we can do a wise choice of selection, wise choice in the selection of projects. In such cases, we can do economic valuation that is based on estimation of the importance of these free facilities to the community in comparison to the consumer goods that are bought. For example, how many times a medical facility valuable as a rupees worth, as a dollar worth compared to bought commodities. We can make judgment. Judgment is required for estimation of economic values in such cases. These variables, these goods and services being created by the project efforts can be judged by own judgment of the project analyst or project formulator. There are a number of goods which are required to be valued. Among them is labor. One of them is labor. The wages of labor would be equal to that amount of product which an extra labor hired would produce. That is its a marginal value product. A labor base cannot exceed a marginal value product of labor. Under conditions of perfect competition, market base rate is the approximate shadow price for labor. Just as any market price is approximate shadow price for a good or service, in a perfectly competitive market, wage rate under perfect competition, wage rate determined by the market forces of demand and supply for labor in a perfectly competitive market would reflect the shadow price for labor. We know that as per neoclassical theory, there is no involuntary unemployment, and the base is equal to the productivity of the marginal worker. So, the market wage are the opportunity cost of labor and social value of the goods lost by doing another work, by adding another worker. So, how much extra goods are being created by putting another labor in the production process will tell how much wages can be paid to that labor. However, the imperfections of the labor market are quite widespread, and market wages are inappropriate for economic valuation. As we have been discussing, the goods market are imperfect as well as labor markets too are imperfect. So the price determined for the labor, wages determine the labor market. Imperfect labor market cannot be taken as a true reflection of their values. There are valid reasons. There are imperfections and prices determined out of a equilibrium of forces in imperfect market. Wages are inappropriate, and that cannot be used for economic valuation. I'm sorry. First, the wage rate obviously does not reflect the opportunity cost of an unemployed person. The economy loses nothing apart from the disutility of work from creation of new job. Creation of new jobs. Second, redistribution accompanies new jobs. The redistribution occurs as the immediate gainers, that is, formerly unemployed person save less than the immediate loser, that is, employer or employed workers. In other words, though the direct opportunity cost of employment in terms of aggregate consumption may be zero, there is an indirect opportunity cost whose magnitude depends on the propensity to save of the newly employed and other in the economy. However, the fact is that we can say very little a priori. We cannot tell in advance what will happen actually. We do not have prior information on the propensity to save because of this project, how much changes will take place in the consumption and saving of those who are employed or of those newly employed and those which are actually uh, employment provider or others. Only the direct opportunity cost can generally be assumed to be smaller than the market wages. We cannot consider actually this indirect opportunity cost. We cannot tell with certainty how much it will be. So, this opportunity cost, direct opportunity cost, can be assumed to be smaller than the market price. The availability of labor in surplus labor economy varies during the year and it is employed gainfully for some days. For the rest of the period, it is surplus. That is the marginal product value of these unemployed people is zero. Those who were not engaged at all, producing nothing in the economy. So the marginal value product of such people was zero. Therefore, considering its value as zero for economic valuation is one of the options. The other option is to value the price of labor as an annual basis. There are a number of options, alternatives which can be used. One of them is using zero marginal, opportunity cost. But it will not be wise actually. There is again question. Another option is to value the price of labor on annual basis. This will be equal to the wages received for the period when they are fully employed. That is, if they were employed for 145 days in a year at the rate of rupees 600 per day, then their wages rupees 87,000. 87,000. If a person is employed for 145 days at the rate of 600 rupees per day, the wages so earned by him during this period will be 87,000 rupees only. The last option is to value the labor as a base rate it commands. It commands. So it is based on the assumption that the laborer produce output worth something nearer their wages. Although labor in a project area may be unemployed or underemployed, this may not be the case after development takes place. We may use all three options to value labor if project duration is more than 10 years. or any of them if project is of period less than 10 years. Valuation of land and natural resources. The appropriate measure of value of land is the ultimate consumer willingness for aggregate consumption benefits made possible by the use of land. As it has alternative uses, we will use the principle of a net value of a production foregone or its opportunity cost as the basis for estimating the economic value of land. There are three alternatives. There are three alternatives to value the land and natural resources. First one is the value the land at its purchase price as a one-time capital cost, as other cost items in a project which are of a fixed nature. Similarly, land can be used as a capital investment. This is the simplest approach with the inherent assumption that the price of land is a fairly good reflection of the present worth of contribution that the land would make to its future use. As we know, production is a complementary process without any of the factors of production, as we know. All factors of production as have been divided into four classes: land, labor, capital. So that this value so produced by their joint efforts is shared among the factory owners. So land is one of them, and capital is a man-made means of production, and this expenditure is made on creation of capital goods. So this can be reflected. This investment expenditure made on the land can be taken as expenditure on capital assets. This is simplest approach with the inherent assumption. Underlying assumption is that the price of land is a fairly good reflection of the present worth of a contribution the land would make to its future use. It also implies that land market is relatively competitive and open. That is almost a perfect market. And as we know, the price determined by the equilibrium of a perfect market, the price is considered as a shadow price, actual price actually. So if a land market is perfect one, then the price determined in this market is a true price or economic price. This is a good alternative if land is to be carefully purchased, actually purchased instead of only land use change. So this can be used in such cases. Secondly, value the land at its rental value on an annual basis. This would be a suitable alternative in a land market where sales are thought to be strongly influenced by the non-economic factors. But rental market for land is relatively competitive. This is another alternative to value the land at rental prices, rental value. Rental value then becomes a convenient and rather easily determined proxy for the net value of production foregone and can be easily used for economic valuation. And third alternative to value the land is value the land at an estimate of the net value of production foregone or opportunity cost as value of value on annual basis. This reduces the incremental benefits that is realized. And this method of using an imputed cost of land is the approximate one for various scenarios of existing land use for economic valuation purpose. Since land is used for public, this land is used for land is put for many uses. Sometimes this is the only means to provide the value of land. Out of these three possible valuation methods, land can be valued using any of the methods. We can realize that much the same analysis applies to all natural resources as water flowing down a river or any other natural resource. On the same line, as has been discussed in case of land, other natural resources can also be valued using these principles. The building of for example, building of a dam at one place and its use in the neighboring areas may affect water supply farther down the stream. And the valuation of this impact is similar to that of land. However, while private market exists for land, they may be absent for river water. The user's willingness to pay for water may have to be guessed rather than observed in the market. There is a difference actually. This is the difference because market may not present for the river water, but land market do exist. So in the absence of this market for river water, it is just approximation of the value of the river water based on their observation actually. It cannot be recorded. It can be judged only. So in this case, as in the case of land, there is no prospect of increasing the total flow of water. Hence, the relevant alternative is demand reduction for which costs need to be examined. This is an alternative actually. Land this demand reduction for which costs need to be examined. Okay. Are you here on the platform? May I hear you?
Yes, sir, you are quite audible, sir. And I
Okay.
think students will be there.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
And the building of a dam, In this case, as in the case of land, there is no prospect of increasing the total flow of river. Hence, the relevant alternative is demand reduction for which cost need to be examined. Demand can be reduced for which the cost being examined is an alternative actually. Another resource which need to be appropriated actually, the price of the good or service need to be adjusted as foreign exchange. Foreign exchange means the foreign currency which is needed or generated by project activities. Premium on foreign exchange. The principle used to estimate the value of foreign currency is to determine the willingness to pay in terms of rupees for an extra unit of foreign currency made available. As a first approximation, we may again consider the market price as a measure of willingness to pay for foreign currency. The market price of any foreign currency is nothing but the official rate of exchange of that currency between this currency and the foreign currency. If the foreign currency market is perfectly competitive, the domestic willingness to pay is presumably accurately reflected by the domestic currency equivalent at official rate. Since this rate is determined on the basis of equilibrium between demand and supply in a perfectly competitive market. Therefore, this willingness to pay will reflect this official rate of exchange. However, these markets are regulated by the government, and the official market rates understate the domestic willingness to pay for foreign currencies. It becomes necessary to estimate by other means the true economic value expressed in rupee terms of a unit of foreign currency. It is also important for social benefit cost analysis. How the shadow prices of foreign currencies are calculated. I have certain exercise or certain example actually. Let us suppose that foreign exchange is used to import various commodities at their CIF, cost, insurance, and freight price per unit as it becomes available at the margin. Let F is the fraction of foreign exchange that is allocated to the ith of the n commodities at the margin. Since numerous commodities are imported using this foreign exchange, so this fraction of foreign currency is being used on the commodity bought for this project purpose. Let PI be the domestic market clearing price, that is the price reflecting the marginal willingness to pay for the ith import of the good. And finally, let CI represents the CIF price in rupees calculated at the official exchange rate. Then FICI represents the quantity of ith import that will be purchased if an extra rupee of foreign exchange becomes available. Now, the quantities of a good 1 up to n are C1 F1 upon C1 Fi upon Ci2 Fn by Cn, and have the respective unit values actually respective prices P1, I1, Pi, Pn in terms of aggregate consumption that takes place in the economy as well. The total aggregate consumption value of the imported good is therefore P1 Fi upon Ci plus Pi Fi by Ci plus so on so forth, with F1 plus Fi plus Fn equals to 1. This expression defines actually the shadow price of the foreign exchange that can be denoted as SP equals to summation Fi Ci upon Pi. This is to say that shadow price of the foreign exchange is a weighted average of the ratios of a market clearing of official CIA prices, the weights reflecting the content of the marginal import bill. Although above expression is straightforward, but some important assumptions underlying them are this expression is based on certain assumptions, and these assumptions are: one, this formula for shadow price of foreign exchange is based on the actual and projected trade policies, not on optimum policies. Trade policies of a country are devised and revised from time to time, and that may not be optimum at some time, at the time of evaluation actually. So this formula is based on the actual and projected trade policies. Projected trade policies are always based on the actual trade policies prevalent in the country. This assumption is on the basis that the allocation of foreign exchange at margin among various demands is a given parameter of project decisions rather than a choice variable. The trade policies are the outcome of a bargaining process among various interest groups between foreign and domestic and inside, outside, and the government. Inside the government and outside the government. Because this trade policy has to reconcile many interest groups, various interest groups. So this is a compromising type of arrangement actually that may not be optimal. So this assumption will reflect what is likely to happen and not that ought to happen. Secondly, another assumption implicit in the formula is that the increment to supplies measured by the ratios F1 upon P1, F2 upon P2, Fn upon Pn are not additive. This means that no reverse import substitution takes place. In other words, the marginal import in general represents net additions to the supplies of the commodity in question. However, capital goods are the exceptions and they are excluded from the calculation of marginal import bill in our formula. The allocation vector is limited to consumer goods and intermediates used for the production of consumer goods. This allocation vector considers consumer goods and intermediate goods excluding capital goods. It may be advisable to eliminate rationed goods from the calculation of formula and weights remaining goods. Remaining goods must then be adjusted so that they add up to unity. Every good in question, good which is being considered should be weighed appropriately, and their nature should be identified whether they belong to consumer goods or they are intermediate goods or capital goods. So exclude capital goods from the calculation and include only final goods and the intermediate goods for this purpose. And adjusted, these need to be adjusted that they add up to the unity. Trade policy impact. Trade policy has impact on foreign exchange actually, foreign exchange rates. and foreign exchange rates need to be adjusted for economic valuation of the project. So, what effect a trade policy to have on foreign exchange rates we must consider. It was mentioned earlier that the calculation of the shadow price of the foreign exchange is based on the assumptions regarding trade policies. It is based on actual and projected policies rather than optimal policies. The weights, the weights in shadow price calculations depend on trade policies as has been already discussed. But we are not expected to make judgment on national trade policy during project analysis as it is a matter of government decision. We cannot do this. We cannot expect any change taking place during this period. Or this project activity cannot affect this trade policy actually. Hence the weights in the calculation of shadow price of foreign exchange rate are provided by the government. This indicates that the trade policy has a direct bearing on project analysis. Trade policy has direct effect on uh, this project analysis. Why this is direct? Because the foreign exchange being used, foreign exchange rate being used is influenced by the trade policy. That is deviating from its shadow price or true economic value actually. That is why it has direct. This trade policy has direct impact on project analysis. Then valuation of intangible cost and benefits. The indirect project result in number of goods and number of benefits rather, and number of and required to incur number of costs, and those costs which can be measured, which are phased, which can be valued, are actually direct and intentional actually. Those benefits which are created by the project activity, which are intendedly produced, are direct benefits, and those benefits which are produced accidentally, incidentally, not produced intentionally, unintentional production, are the benefits coming. And most of the indirect benefits which are praised by the people in society may be intangible or maybe tangible. It depends upon the nature of projects. Indirect benefits are those that are reflected by immediate willingness to pay. The projects often yield a net gain to society that is not fully captured by those that acquire the project output. As I have told you, projects are undertaken by many individuals or organizations or many entrepreneurs for their own benefit, for a benefit of with the expectation of some benefits. So those who are undertaking these projects capture most of the benefits of that project, but benefits do extend beyond this. They are not fully captured by those that acquire the project output. In such case, the additional benefits ought to be ideally added to the overall contribution of the project. Additional benefits extending beyond those who acquire the project. Any member in the society, if uses other than those who acquire the project output, are additional benefits actually. Such a situation is typically occurs when an ancillary good or service produced in connection with the project contributes to the satisfaction of consumers other than those who receive the project output. For example, the road constructed for a project work may also provide benefit to the uh, nearby people, communication in the entire area. This represents externalities. This represents externalities that result in lower production cost for other producers owing to their ability to use a project byproduct free of charge. Sometimes similar indirect benefits are provided by a project that involves the training of its labor force. The new skills acquired by the workers contribute to the output of the project. But if the workers eventually move to other jobs, they bring with them opportunities for greater production than they could have without their acquired skills. These skills then result in a contribution to aggregate consumption made possible by the project, but not accounted for. In long run, it is addition to the output of the country because of this acquiring new skills. But these are not accounted for the project. However, the question is whether such evaluations are always worth doing. The probability of error in such estimates is very high. So, due to various difficulties in their estimation and high chance of errors in the estimates, such benefits are called intangible. Intangible. In any case, their amount is likely to be very low compared to direct benefits, which are estimated quite precisely. Therefore, these intangible benefits are not included in most of the project analysis, especially related to agriculture sector. There are no doubt benefits, and these intangible benefits are not included in the project analysis. Similarly, there are consideration of indirect costs. The basic principles in evaluating costs with respect to any objective is that costs are simply equivalent to maximum the benefit foregone. Or in other terms, you can define any activity that reduces the objective function of any member in the society is cost. Therefore, we wish to assess the external effect that result in net loss to society. A typical example is the pollution of air or water by industrial plants discharging effluent in the water body or in the air. The polluting discharge is a byproduct of the industrial process, which results in net disbenefit to surrounding population. Although people affected are not generally compensated for their discomfort by those responsible for the plant. In such cases, there is a consumption cost to the society that ought to be included in the assessment of the project. At our present state of knowledge, it appears impossible to prove decisively that one project is inferior to another in terms of its contribution to indirect disbenefits. Therefore, these are also known as intangible costs. It can be concluded that it appears practically impossible to quantify many externalities. However, we should recognize it as one of the limitations of social cost benefit analysis. We do acknowledge that external effects may well be important even though we may not be able to quantify them. A qualitative description of these effects may be included that could be useful in making choice of a project. At any event, such broad descriptions may facilitate decisions by putting the quantified net benefit of a project into proper perspective. Proper perspective. So that is how we reach on the economic value of the good just by adjusting the value of factor services, just by finding the value of intangible goods, intangible benefits, we are in the position to find the actual worth of the project. So we determine value of the project, and based on the worth of the project, we can make a choice. So economic valuation, economic analysis is much more than the financial analysis alone. In financial analysis, just we consider the market prices of goods and services used or produced, and also take into account without any making adjustment in the market price and the economic price, just by taking into consideration the direct cost and benefits, ignoring the intangible and cost and benefits. But for social benefit cost analysis point of view, these are important. Prices used for valuing the goods and services used in the project and produced by the project become important. So we have to adjust the market prices of different factor services or goods and services so produced out or likely to be produced by the project. We need to adjust to their economic values. And additionally, we have to include the values of intangible costs and intangible benefits. Even if some of the intangible benefits are not even quantifiable, but these must be taken into account by doing this economic analysis. Should I switch to next topic? Hello. Should I start another topic, sir? Is there someone on the platform? Am I audible too? Am I audible to you? Is there anyone? Hello? No one is there. Okay. I continue.
Hello, sir. I'm here with you, sir.
Yeah. Am I audible to you people?
Yes, sir. You're audible, sir.
Okay. Should I start next topic, aggregating project accounts? Should I?
Yes, we can go ahead, sir.
Okay. So I take this further 20, 25 minutes. Whatever it will be completed, I'll do this. See, aggregating project accounts. Important aspect is this. A major objective of the development process is to increase national income rapidly. So the various projects undertaken for this purpose are contributing towards this goal. For bringing about the development of an economy, number of national projects are undertaken for this purpose of increasing national income. Economic analysis helps in identifying such projects, which project need to be undertaken and which project need not to be undertaken or relegated to be taken up later on. The projects with the highest internal economic return will be the project which contributes most to the national income. All projects with a benefit cost ratio of greater than unity or a positive net worth at the opportunity cost of capital will make the greatest contribution to the economic growth of the economy. Most common measures of national income that are used are gross domestic product or the gross national product. There are two broad measures which are frequently used to measure this. National plans define the economic objective of development in terms of growth of GDP or GNP. National plans devised by the competent bodies in the respective countries define the economic objective of development. And these are frequently expressed in terms of growth in GDP or GNP. What is GDP? GDP is defined as the value of gross output of goods and services produced in the country less the value of intermediate goods and services gone in the production of these. That is, those used in the process of producing other goods and services. GNP is the same as GDP except it includes income earned from abroad and excludes income transferred out of the country by foreigners. Means net of foreign income. Net of income earned from abroad is excluded from, added or excluded depending upon the direction, makes GNP. The GDP can be estimated in three ways, all of which are equivalent and give the same result. There are three methods of estimating GDP, and these three methods see the same thing from different angles actually. One, the value of all expenditure on final goods and services produced less imports. The data are readily available for this and is employed quite commonly for estimating. All expenditure, actually different groups undertake expenditure on final goods and services. Different this household sector particularly the consumes goods and services which are produced domestically as well as bought from abroad. So those expenditure made by residents of the country on consumer goods and services are valued. And B, subtract the value of a expenditure made on inputs. Secondly, the sum of all factor income payments, including capital consumption allowance, that is depreciation, capital consumption allowance, and all indirect taxes net of subsidies. Means factor income earned by all factors of production in the economy, including depreciation. And third one is the sum of the value added from every producing units, means the valuing the adding up of the value added by different sectors of the economy. It is this third measure which is of most interest to us because we link the project analysis theory with national income theory through value added. We are going to discuss it in this unit. How do we measure this? Theoretical issues in aggregating project accounts. No doubt there are certain points need to be clear before doing this aggregation of accounts. Often projects are the first concrete portion of a larger, less precisely identified programs. Projects are the only a part of the broader program. A project, as we know, is an activity on which we will spend money in expectation of a return and which logically seems to lend itself to planning, financing, and implementation as a unit. Every project is undertaken with an expectation of getting benefits out of that. So for that, they undertake certain expenditure in the project. Clearly, projects which a nation chooses to implement should be of high priority in the national development program. If projects chosen is not of high priority, means national resources of the country are not being put in efficient manner. So it is must the project which a nation chooses to implement should be of a high priority in the national development program. Projects are selected only after thorough consideration of alternatives in the economy as a whole and within the agriculture sector itself. There are a number of alternatives available in the economy as well as in the individual sectors. When we talk of agriculture sector, there are numerous projects, numerous areas in which projects can be undertaken, ranging from irrigation and drainage system to dam construction, to road construction, to installation of tube well or undertaking land reclamation or many more. So these projects are undertaken should be of high priority and these should be chosen only after a thorough consideration of alternatives, which of the available options will be of more worth. A formal agricultural plan is framed on the basis of sustained and careful research and preparation. Agriculture sector studies will help assure that there is a suitable balance between alternative investments in agriculture sector and that proper attention is paid to the linkages between growth in agriculture to that in other sectors leading to the growth in GDP, growth of the economy as a whole. There are various aggregate measures. Aggregate measures are some other aggregate measures that are estimated besides GDP estimates are as aggregate consumption, aggregate saving, aggregate investment, capital formation, and many more. So we'll discuss one of them, one by one. This is the aggregate of all expenditures on consumption, on current consumption of goods and services. We usually correlate standard of living to the per capita consumption of goods and services. So, consumption of goods and services per unit time reflects the standard of living of any section of the society or the society as a whole. As we know that it is obtained by dividing the aggregate consumption by population. Consumption level is estimated by dividing total consumption expenditure on goods and services by number of populations. So per capita consumption will be an indicator how much goods and services and on an average the individual consumes in the society, and that is a reflection of the standard of living of that society. The relationship between aggregate consumption expenditure and aggregate income of household sector is the consumption function. The relationship between aggregate consumption expenditure and aggregate income of the household sector in the economy is termed as consumption function. A functional relationship is established between aggregate consumption expenditure and aggregate income of household sector. So we can correlate the consumption expenditure either with the national income or disposable income. This can be done at two levels. National income and this disposable income. Disposable income, whatever left after meeting all liabilities of the individuals. The amount available for disposing on goods and services. So this is a very useful relationship, but is used for aggregating actually. Another measure is gross domestic savings. We can use that. We can see that the income that is not consumed is saved. Gross domestic saving is the difference between GDP and aggregate consumption, or you can say national income or disposable income less consumption. Note that while the most of the consumption is attributed to household sector, saving is done by other sectors of the economy as well. It is frequently argued that consumption expenditure is made by household sector only, but savings are done by other sectors as well. So this is because the part of the income generated in the production doesn't reach the household actually. In the production process, whatever income is generated is not distributed to all those who have produced that. A part of that is retained, a retained profit with the business units where they are generated and constitute the part of business savings. A part of the income which is not distributed to those who have produced it and is retained by the business firms, either retained earning or the depreciation that is a saving. Governments take away some income in the form of taxes, which is the part of the government revenue. But if a government can also generate saving if they do not spend all the revenue so received on current consumption, current goods and services. Actually, out of the revenue generated by the government raised from the public in the form of taxes, has to be used by the government for creating common goods for the people in the society. Common goods, particularly for those who cannot afford to buy these goods and services. And some goods which are possible to be created by the government only, like defense, justice, education. All these are the things which are created by the government out of the revenue generated from tax collection. But if this tax collection exceeds the expenditure made by the government on creation of common goods, these government too saves. So gross domestic saving is the sum of saving done by all sectors in the economy: household sector, business sector, as well as this government sector. Third measure of another aggregate is gross domestic capital formation. The production process requires the services of fixed assets such as machinery, equipment, infrastructure, etc., and working capital, that is stock of raw material, work in process, and finished goods, and so on and so forth. The act of replacing worn out assets and creating new assets is capital formation. As we know, this capital formation is done for different purposes, as has been discussed, either for replacing worn out assets or creating new assets for expanding capacity of production. Come under machinery, equipments, infrastructure, or working capital or stock of raw material or finished goods in stock. Another measure is gross domestic capital. Yes, gross domestic capital formation consists of these things. One, making investment to replace the depreciated existing fixed assets. As has been displayed in the earlier slide, this is of three types: making investment for replacing the existing capital asset, or adding to the stock of finished fixed assets, or adding to the inventories. Sometime first two of these together, called gross fixed investment. First two, addition to the fixed asset and the replacement of a depreciated existing asset, is called a gross fixed investment. And third one is called inventory investment. Inventory investment. So we are concerned with the replacement and addition to the physical assets and merely financial assets, or a transfer of ownership of existing assets. Bulk of domestic capital formation is financed from gross domestic savings. However, gross domestic saving need not equal to gross domestic capital formation. Domestic saving may be loaned to foreigners and contribute to capital formation in abroad. Conversely, foreigners may loan their savings to us for capital formation here in our country. We can see that gross domestic saving is in former case will exceed the gross domestic capital formation, and in the later case, gross domestic capital formation will exceed gross domestic saving. If depreciation is subtracted from gross domestic capital formation, we get net capital formation. If we take into account the depreciation taking place in a year while estimating gross domestic capital formation, we will get net capital formation in the country. So it is just indicated that net addition to the stock of fixed assets in the country. The treatment of consumer durables is somewhat problematic actually. When a refrigerator is bought, are we spending on current consumption or investing in a physical asset? Is a question. Strictly speaking, it is the latter. Investing in physical asset because we consume refrigeration services yielded by the refrigerator, not the refrigerator itself. That will continue to yield such services over a number of years, just as a machine tool yields services over a number of years. So that is how it is an expansion in the physical assets capacity. Same refrigerator, if it was bought by a research laboratory for the pharmaceutical company, would become capital formation. Capital formation. Another issue, the industrial production and agricultural production. Aggregation of industrial production and agricultural production. These are the aggregates of sector outputs, that is activities classified under industry and agriculture respectively. Changes in the industrial production are reported in the form of changes in the index numbers called index of industrial production. Essentially, changes in the value of output of different industries are weighed according to specified weighing scheme to arrive at the value of the index numbers with reference to base year. This index numbers of production indicates this much is the change in the level of production of the selected group of commodities in relation to that happened in some selected base year. Index of agricultural production is based on the value of output of various crops. Every crop has a weight as a specified weighing scheme, and the value of index is calculated with reference to a base year using an appropriate formula. These indices are constructed by incorporating crops, specified crops with appropriate weights depending upon their importance in the agricultural production. The methodology is finalized by the Directorate of Economics and Statistics, Ministry of Agriculture, Government of India. Besides the index of total agricultural production, index of production for group of crops like production of cereals, production of pulses, production of food grains, oil seeds, fruits, vegetables, condiments, and so on and so forth can be calculated. However, production of food grains, oil seeds, sugarcane, jute, cotton are of critical importance in the country because these make a major part of staple goods in our country. Staple goods are commercial goods. These are of crucial importance from their contribution point of view. Concept of value added. We have studied earlier that national income is the sum of the value added of all productive enterprises, including development projects. The value added of any project is the market price of the goods and services completed less the cost of material and services purchased from others. That is the difference between the gross output and the value of intermediate goods consumed. Value added may be gross and net. This value can be measured at two levels, either at gross level or net level. Gross value added includes payments for taxes, interest, rent, profit, reserves for depreciation and compensation to management and other employees, including social security contributions. And net value added excludes depreciation. Difference between the net and the gross is only of depreciation allowances. If we include in this value added the depreciation amount, we get gross value added. Or if we subtract this amount of depreciation, that is capital consumption allowance, from the gross value, we receive net value added by the system or the sector or by the project. So at present, we are interested in gross value added because it is the gross value added by all the productive enterprises in the economy which adds up to gross domestic product. So this arrow showing the external inputs are being put in the project, and these external inputs after processing are being converted into some other goods and services which are more valuable than the external inputs earlier have, resulting in output. So we can show a project and its contribution to national income as given above. Here we see that the difference between what the external inputs are worth and what the final output is worth is the value added by the project. Value added by the project, and this is created through the use of its own internal resources. So we may divide these into just two major classes. These internal resources are labor and capital. This value added by the system by the project using external inputs. If a value of these external inputs is adjusted or paid out, then whatever left belong to only labor and capital goods. Here we have an arrow representing the flow of output from project, say, rice from an irrigation scheme. The total output is made up of the contribution to the stream of output as a result of external inputs applied, and the contribution of the project own internal inputs of labor and capital. So the value added is that amount of output, total outputs, stream, which is attributable to the contribution of internal inputs of labor and capital. So far, we have been talking of a real resource flow, that is rice or coconut or wheat or beef or cattle, etc. Beef, cattle, etc. Flowing in the other direction is the stream of money. Stream of money. Actually, real flows indicate these physical goods or non-physical goods which are flowing out of the project. On the other side, there is flow of money. The money paid for each of the real good or service or their value stated as at shadow prices. The project receives from customers and in turn pays its suppliers for external inputs it uses. What is left over is available for remunerating internal factors of production like labor and capital. So this is divided between remuneration of labor in project and to the capital in the project. This shows that the value added is identical to the total of remuneration to the internal factors of production. Value added amounts to the difference between the value of goods and services provided by the outside suppliers and value of what is supplied by the project to customers plus the value of unsold output including home consumed production. So that is how we reach on the total values. Labor payments include all kinds of remunerations for all kinds of labor. Labor payments includes all kinds of remuneration for all kinds of labor, like wages, salaries, bonus, in-kind payment, subsistence production up to the shadow price of labor, manager's salary, consultants' fees, and social security contribution. All these are the payments made for the physical or mental labor exercise involved in the project. In-kind payment and subsistence production greater than the shadow price of labor are properly attributable to capital remuneration, not to the waste component. In case of farmers who own farms and supply most of both labor and management skills, we are likely to attribute to the farmer only the equivalent of his wages as a laborer and nothing at all for his management skills. Anything over wage is considered return to capital actually.
Sir, it is already 5 o'clock.
Okay, sir.
So you may bind up as per your content.
There are few issues which can be dealt at later stage, and just aggregation what I have covered is I think over. Certain concepts are there, certain limitations are there, certain uses are there that they can be dealt in by the candidates at their own. Should I stop now? Okay, sir. Thank you very much. Should I bind, sir?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You may bind up for today, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay, bye.
Okay, sir. So I'm just closing the recording now.
Okay.